Hyde, there was a vote, and the vote today was votes shy of having a commission to look into the insurrection that happened on January 6th. Obviously, the Democrats are mad. The Republicans are happy. A lot of Democrats are mad because of the fact that they didn't break the filibuster and do what Mitch McConnell had done a number of times during his time as majority leader. What's your take on that, the fact that they came up 4 votes shy?
I mean, number one, my first reaction is it's pathetic that it wasn't 100 votes to study what happened. I mean, basically, a mob stormed the Capitol. The last time that happened was the War of 1812, and it was done by the British, and we were at war. And this idea that these were simply tourists, none of us who were watching live that day should ever pretend that we didn't see what we saw. We saw an armed insurrection marching through the Capitol, looking for the vice president with a lynching pole in the front of the Capitol and looking for the Speaker of the House. And so if that doesn't warrant a bipartisan reaction of what the heck was that all about, and where did these folks come from, and what do we need to do to make sure this never happens again, I don't know what does. And so this is all about move on, nothing to see here. And the worst thing that you can do, you take a look at 9/11, Joel, even $9 million spent on a Benghazi hearing and 800 pages, and we have an armed insurrection against the Capitol and against our government and against a fair election, and somehow that doesn't warrant even a nod. What's going to happen now, and I think it's unfortunate, is that this is going to turn into hearings in the House. It's going to turn into hearings in the Senate, when they should be doing the business of the people and leave it up to a bipartisan, in fact, nonpartisan group to take a look at this, which is what I think that bill did. So it's really unfortunate. This thing isn't over. There is going to be an analysis and a study. It's just going to be done in a highly partisan way as opposed to a bipartisan way through an independent commission.
Well, I look at it, and they still did get 6 votes. The Democrats did, 6 people to cross over and vote with them for this commission. There's a lot of people who say with 56 votes, what more do you need? That the filibuster should not be in place, and that filibuster is stopping this country from moving forward in important actions like this commission. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that this is something, Joel, that should have always been bipartisan. And I think to break the filibuster to do this would even make it more partisan, this independent commission. And so it would fly in the face of what you're trying to accomplish, which is let's come together, let's analyze what's happened, let's put politics aside, put party aside, and do the right thing. And so I would not, if I had been there, I would have certainly voted for the commission, but I would not have voted to break the filibuster.
There's 2 individuals on the Supreme Court, and they're on the Supreme Court because the filibuster was broken, and it was broken by Mitch McConnell. Are Democrats just too soft to do the work? And by that, I mean this. You say it's just going to be done in a partisan way. I would say that if they got the votes, the majority, in this case 56 votes, to put the commission together, that's going to be the old news. There's not a lot of people talking about the filibuster being broken on those Supreme Court nominees. You and I talk about it because we know about it, but the average Joe out there doesn't know that. And so, you fast forward, and as Democrats, you say, no, this is important enough. We're going to do this, and we've got even 6 Republicans that go with us. I mean, what's happened to our democracy where 56 isn't enough?
Well, one thing that I'm sure a lot of your listeners who are familiar with breaking of the filibuster will remember, that this started when the Democrats basically said we aren't going to require a 60-vote threshold for district court appointments. We'll only keep it for circuit court appointments and Supreme Court appointments. And it was Mitch McConnell who took it one step further and said, nope, we're going to include Supreme Court appointments. And so, this back and forth, I think the bigger story today is not the filibuster, Joel, it's why would Senator Hoeven, why would Senator Cramer not vote for a commission? I mean, why? I mean, in what world would this not warrant a 9/11 type commission? And when you have everybody and former Trump appointees saying the single greatest threat to our democracy is insurrection groups that are domestic terrorism groups, don't you think we ought to study that in a bipartisan way? And so the filibuster is a sideshow. I think the greater question is, what is everybody afraid of if you open this up and actually take a look at it?
Well, I want to push back on that a little bit in this way. I think if you're asking me why Hoeven and Cramer didn't vote in favor of the commission, the answer is really easy. They don't want that study going on. They don't want what may come out of that study. They don't like the results of it. In fact, I will take this to a place, Heidi, that puts me in a little bit of danger, but I don't care. You've got one of those senators empowering members of North Dakota media to be in that Capitol and to be out there live on media saying, look, as far as they know, this is Antifa that's doing this. You know, and so when you've empowered people to do that, encourage them to come to D.C. and then encourage them to misinform people, you've got an issue. And so you're not going to like the results of what that commission finds. The other thing you're not going to like is the fact that that commission goes on during an election cycle. They're not going to want to have that conversation when at the time they're trying to get back the majority. So I think the filibuster does matter. I think it's a sign that the Democrats are too weak to do what they need to do when they really need to do it.
You know, let's just back up and say, look, a commission, a bipartisan, independent commission that would have taken the Congress out of the analysis, they wait for the report, was absolutely the way to go. So now the alternative is going to be a Democratic Senate committee hearing and long investigations in committees, which tend to be very hyper-partisan these days. It's going to be House committee investigations. This isn't going to go away, Joel. And in the midst of all of this, we're going to start hearing reports coming out of the cases, all of the litigation that's going to be forthcoming of people like the shaman, the QAnon shaman, who now says, oh, don't blame me. I'm going to claim that I'm mentally impaired. And so the truth will come out. The question is, can we accept the truth when it's not done in a context that is bipartisan? And you know, this idea of that nothing to see here, just move on, move on. I mean, I would challenge everybody to go back and take a look, if and I'm sure there'll be documentaries, take a look at what happened that day. I remember I was doing national network news on the vote count. And I just I just sat in horror of what I was seeing. And almost every American did. And now, because it's turned into a partisan thing, it's like nothing to see here. That's not the right reaction to what happened. And if people feel so aggrieved that they are marching on the Capitol, then let's find out why, and let's find out who they were.
You know, there's a lot of talk about lobbying and the power of those that lobby. You know, I want to go back to the Capitol Police because we are brother and sister, and I was at that Capitol many times with you. And one of the things that I am the most proud of as your much, much younger brother, one of the things that I am the most proud of is when you would walk into that Capitol and the reaction you got from people that had become your friends. And that was the Capitol Police, the first name basis, the knowledge of each other's family basis. I mean, these people became part of your life. I think that some of the senators, many of the senators can't say that. I mean, how do you look at the Capitol Police in the eye and say you didn't matter because we're not going to take a look at this? Now, before we go to a break, I want to play this because I mentioned lobbying. Well, here is grassroots lobbying. Gladys Sicknick, Brian Sicknick's mother, went to the Hart Building, and she went door to door to the Republicans to find a way to get them to vote the way they didn't today. And I want you to take a look at this.
Do you think you can change minds today?
I hope so. I hope so. And Brian had a work ethic like second to none, and he was just there for for our country and for these guys. And he just was doing his job, and he got caught up in it, and it's very sad.
Last question. Does it anger you, Mrs. Sidney, to hear senators who do not support this commission, and what emotions do you feel when you're confronted with that?
This is why I'm here today. Usually I'm stay in the background, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore.
Now, I know you were a United States Senator, but I also know your mom. I mean, for her to go through that pain all over again to make the case that you just made of how in the world can't you take a look at this? I just don't know how you look at her in the eye, Heidi. I just don't.
Well, I mean, I don't know who could. I told you, Joel, Officer Goodman, who has since been awarded the Congressional Medal, he's a great friend of mine. I mean, he was like one of my favorite people in the whole wide world when I lived in Washington. And I look at him and I look at what he did for the people who sit in that chamber, risking it all, and then marching them up to other officers who were risking it all. And they aren't even willing to risk a political vote. Think about that. Think about what was risked by not just those who perished that day and who were severely injured, but those people who held the line, the DC police. How do you look at them and say, oh, nothing to see here? They're living with the post-traumatic stress of that day. I mean, this wasn't just a 10-minute kind of firefight. This was a 5-hour siege. And people were holding the door. Go back and listen and watch. There is shame for every person who voted no. Shame on them. Well, and shame on our congressional delegation. And I don't speak very often, as you know, Joel, publicly about my disappointment. I am incredibly disappointed that North Dakota's delegation did not have the courage to do the right thing as it related to this commission.
Well, John Hoeven and Kevin Cramer better never look me in the eye, whether it be on the radio show or whether it be here on TV, and cite again Blue Lives Matter. Back to down the road, we're discussing the vote that was held today where the Democrats didn't win. They only got 56 votes of the 60 because of the filibuster needed to have a bipartisan commission to study what happened in the insurrection on January 6th. Now, Heidi Heitkamp is our guest. Heidi, I want to share with you the names of individuals that didn't even vote, okay? Senator Marsha Blackburn, Roy Blunt, Mike Braun, Richard Burr, Jim Inhofe, Mike Rounds, James Rich, Richard Shelby, and Pat Toomey. None of these 9 voted. How do you not vote on something like this?
Well, first off, it just shows how pathetic the Senate is. All of those people took a look at their calendar and said, I don't work in Washington on Fridays, and so I'm going home. And a bunch of them are retiring, and some of them just got reelected, like Mike Rounds. And so, it's like, people will forget. You know what? The officers, the Capitol Police officers, and history will remember all of these votes, including those people who were not even present. And so, this is a historical vote. This is one that people will remember and look back on, because the story of what happened on January 6th will be told. That we will get it in depositions, we will get it in criminal proceedings, we will learn what actually happened. It won't be done orderly in a commission, but it will come out. And when it comes out, none of the people who voted no are going to look very good.
I have to ask you, though, would any of those people gone home if there wasn't a filibuster? I mean, if the filibuster was gone, Heidi, and these people were... Now, hold on, let me make my point. If the filibuster was gone and you had a Friday, any Friday, where you're going to bring an issue up and you're going to have a debate on an issue, these guys wouldn't be running home saying, I get a long weekend.
Well, they definitely would have probably stayed there. But again, Joel, this isn't about the filibuster. I mean, that's a sideshow. The filibuster is a sideshow.
But Heidi, the filibuster is a means to win when you have the majority. What good is the majority if you don't use it on important issues like this? And
Well,
that's the point I'm trying to make. That the
I do not-
Republicans used it in their own benefit, and they used it to win. And I have no doubt that Mitch McConnell would have used it here.
I honestly don't know that that's true. Mitch McConnell had the opportunity to actually invoke the filibuster on substantive pieces of legislation like this, and he didn't. He only did it on nominations. And so be careful. You know, what I always say, I remember what Ted Cruz said to me when the Democrats pursued, when Reid pursued lifting the filibuster. He said, that's fine, because when we have the majority, there's going to be national tort reform, there's going to be right to work laws, national right to work laws, there's going to be all these things that you guys have stopped without the filibuster. And so, you know, politics ebbs and flows. And so, you know, you got to be prepared to take the negative consequences of what happens. And I will tell you, anyone, and I would recommend it to you, Carl Levin, who was a legislator's legislator, former senator from Michigan, dearly loved, very much loved by the military, wrote an op-ed saying, please don't get rid of the filibuster. Barbara Boxer, the most liberal person in the Senate when I was there, begged Harry Reid not to eliminate the filibuster. So just remember, if you want to say the filibuster benefits the extremes in both parties, that's absolutely true.
Well,
Now,
this isn't an extreme. This is something, as you pointed out in the last segment, that is so common sense and is so needed in a bipartisan fashion that the American public wouldn't remember. If they knew that 56 people said, let's do this, that to them would be a win. So we're just going to disagree on that. And when you say that Ted Cruz was worried about tort reform and Ted Cruz was worried about right to work, every one of those states that you say those senators are from that would support right to work, their states have right to work. They do. Texas has right to work. North Dakota has right to work. We fought that every time in the North Dakota legislature, and we didn't win because the conservatives used the state legislature to get what they wanted, Heidi.
Right, but Michigan doesn't. And a national piece of, or national concealed carry reciprocity. I mean, I could go through tons of things that many people said, especially progressives, would not agree with. Now, I mean, so if you're playing the long game and you're a conservative, what you should say is hope they do lift it, because when we have control, we're going to jam through all of this stuff as well.
Well,
And so, I mean, I don't want to get in a debate about the filibuster because this commission's too important. What happened on January 6th is too devastating to our democracy not to be studied and not to be analyzed in a bipartisan, you know, kind of methodical way. And that's not what's going to happen. But understand this, and I've always believed this, Joel. I think Liz Cheney knows more than she's telling anyone. And I say that because of who her father is and who her father knows. I think there is so much out there that is going to be revealed and come out as a result of time and a result of these processes, be it criminal litigation or civil litigation. You saw the Capitol Police have since filed litigation against actually, I think it's DC police officers against Donald Trump. This stuff's going to come out. Why not get it out in a way that we can properly respond to it instead of putting it in a political context?
Well, it is a political context now, and there is no commission now. And I think we got to put that in the light of day, too.